Hi, my name is Michael Caldwell, and this is Group 3 and our presentation on colon cancer. Um, as I said before, my name is Michael. We also have Ryan, Andrea, Antron, Thomas, and Todd, and this is for health policy. Um, Colon cancer is the second most deadliest cancer. It is considered first when you take out the smoking equation of cancers. It affects men and women, and every year, more than 1 million people worldwide are diagnosed with this cancer. 70% of the people who have the cancer are 65% or older, and it's not known as of yet what causes the cancer, but they do know that it develops sporadically. Um, it is also known that people who have immediate family members, say a mother or a brother or sister who has have had colon cancer, are more than likely to develop and die from the disease. For this reason, it's seen as an epidemic. Screening is the most important way to fight colon cancer. Um, it is uh, seen that if a person is screened every 2 years, it can decrease the mortality rate of colon cancer by 16%. Percent of the people who do not have insurance get screened yearly or every 2 years, and the reason for that is considerably expensive to get screened. It is known that it costs usually $1,000 to get screened, and that's if any polyps are not found. Because of this, the ACA classified colon cancer screening as a preventative um, medicine or reason. The ACA has classified colon cancer screening as preventative care. And this is to encourage people to get screened more often and more regularly. Even though that has happened, screening levels are still low, so they are putting in place more policies, and hopefully in a few years the ACA can move the screening rates up for people with colon cancer or people who may be subject to colon cancer. Next, Todd will discuss more of the legislative process and the ACA and things of that nature. Um, so here goes Todd.
Hi, my name is Todd Walter, and I'm here to discuss the legislative process as it relates to colorectal cancer screening. I'm sure if you went to Capitol Hill and talked to the representatives and the senators there, if not all of them, the vast majority would tell you it's a good thing to do, getting tested for colorectal cancer, and they would encourage you to do it. However, the voting record tells a different story. In 2002, the Eliminate Colorectal Cancer Act, and in 2013, the Removing Barriers to Colorectal Screening Act worked their way through Congress. Both bills failed to get through the House. They were both voted on in the Senate and passed, but the House did not bring them up for a vote. In the Senate, these bills went to the Finance Committee for debate. Most of the time these bills do go to the Finance Committee because most of the time they require some sort of funding. Sometimes they'll go to the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, but usually Finance. In the House, there's two different committees that look at these bills simultaneously. The Ways and Means Committee and the Energy and Commerce Committee. Sometimes the Oversight and Government Reform Committees look at these, but typically Ways and Means and Energy and Commerce. The Ways and Means Committee deals with the funding. The Energy and Commerce deals with the health. And actually a subcommittee of the Energy and Commerce called the Health Subcommittee tends to end up with these bills. Again, both bills failed to pass in the House. What it comes down to is Democrats are willing to use federal funds to help people get colorectal screening. Republicans are not willing to do this. Democrats are willing to pass legislation mandating insurance companies to cover colorectal cancer screening, which they showed with the ACA, but Republicans will not pass such bills. I believe this stems from the base of the parties. If you look at the country as a whole, the majority of Americans support using federal funds for colorectal screening, but the majority of Republicans do not. And actually, 76% of Americans and 55% of Republicans support government-funded health care for the elderly. However, 78% of the Tea Party members do not. This just shows who the leadership of the House listened to. And these bills will not be heard on the floor of the House because of this. That ends my presentation. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Andrea Hugo. I'm going to be talking about the interest groups. Within the healthcare sector, Republicans traditionally have gained the most contributions by health interest groups. In 2008 and in 2010, the Democrats received the majority of cash from the healthcare sector. The health sector was majorly affected by the implementation of the Affordable Care Act, a major restructuring of national healthcare policy that became law in 2010. The sector has since been split on the law, with many doctors' associations opposing it while pharmaceutical companies backed it. In 2009, the healthcare sector spent more than $552 million on lobbying efforts alone. Then in 2013, the interest groups spent more than $483 million on lobbying, more than $228 million of which came from the pharmaceutical industry. That industry includes pharmaceutical researchers and Manufacturers of America and the American Cancer Society. Other top lobbying spenders in the health sector include American Hospital Association and the American Medical Association, both of which spent more than $20 million on lobbying. The health industry spent more on lobbying than any other group, including $1 million a day on lobbying and campaign contributions during the 2009 debate. Many elements of their legislation were written directly by the lobbyists.
Hello, my name is Ryan Gaffney, and today I'm going to be discussing the coalitions, political action committees, and regulating agencies that involved with colorectal cancer screenings. Begin with coalitions. There are many coalitions actively involved. I'll discuss a few within today, some of the larger ones I found. And most of them are assumed to be permanent coalitions, until certain medicine advancements can be made as far as treatments for cancer. To begin, the NCCRT, the National Colorectal Cancer Roundtable, was established by the CDC and American Cancer Society in 1997. They wish to increase the number of successful colorectal cancer screening tests. The Colon Cancer Coalition is another one that began in 2006 in Minnesota. They're a 501c3 organization. They basically have a thing every year for 5K race, and it's called the Get Your Rear in Gear. And it's just to raise awareness, and they have a current goal right now to increase their screening rates by 80% by 2018. The NCCS, National Coalitions for Cancer Survivorship, they're an advocacy group that just works with promoting their interests and raising awareness for colorectal cancer screenings. They did so with the ACA, different things like that. They're a leader with the Comprehensive Cancer Care Improvement Act. They also partner with the American Society for Clinical Oncology to form the Cancer Quality Alliance. That was actually a temporary alliance that only lasted until 2013. It was 8 years, and it involved 28 different organizations. There's also the Colon Cancer Alliance, another 501c3 group. They wish to remove colorectal cancer as one of the top causing cancer deaths in the U.S. There's also some state-specific ones, the California Colorectal Cancer Coalition, or C4. Minnesota Cancer Alliance is another one, and they actually started the movement for Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month, and they're trying to promote other states to do the same. Now, to talk about some of the political action committees that work within our government to try to promote some of the interests involved with colorectal cancer screenings and things like that. There's approximately 358 political action committees that make contributions to federal candidates. $55 million was spent in 2014 election cycle toward these candidates from the political action committees. One political action committee was the AMA, the American Medical Association, which contributed about $1.68 million in the 2014 election cycle. They actually gave some large donations to even specific individuals like Frank Pallone and Ed Markey, which they gave $15,000 and $17,000 respectively. For the American Gastroenterology Association, the AGA, actually contributed $202,500 in the 2014 election cycle. They support the colorectal cancer control program ran by the CDC, and their goal is to increase rates for colorectal cancer in the 22 states that are involved. There's also some other PACs involved, Citizens for Cancer Awareness. This is an advocacy group where different citizens can be involved and volunteer their time to raise awareness. The Gastrointestinal PAC, some state-specific ones such as the North Carolina Gastroenterology PAC. They also have a Fight Colorectal Cancer, which is another volunteer-style raise awareness for colorectal cancer screenings. And some of the regulating agencies involved, most of them are under the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. The ones that are most involved with colorectal cancer screening would be the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, Food and Drug Administration, Health Resources and Services Administration, and the National Institute of Health. Now, there's a lot of other ones that may be involved, but those are what was reported as most involved with colorectal cancer. There's hundreds of subcommittees within the industry that might be involved, whether it's just putting their interests on during the legislations or making accreditation for certain companies on certain quality standards. But each agency would have a different focus based on their expertise, based on their premise of their interests and whatnot. Some might be more financially focused, while others are more focused on the quality of care and standards set in the industry. So with that being said, next we're going to hear about some possible solutions, and then we'll conclude our presentation.
Hi, my name is Antoine Martin, and I'm going to be doing the solutions portion of this project. So we know with colorectal cancer, being the second most common cause of cancer death among cancers affecting men and women, there's been, several initiatives to kind of combat the disease. One of these initiatives is colorectal cancer screening. So with the use of colorectal cancer screening, we've seen in the literature that mortality and incidences of those being diagnosed with colorectal cancer have decreased considerably by as much as 30 to 60%. So with this, colorectal cancer screening seems to have a pretty profound effect on colorectal cancer prognosis. So as part of the colorectal cancer screening, there are several examples. You have the fecal occult blood testing, sigmoidoscopy, colonoscopy. And of all of these, the colonoscopy is viewed as the more advantageous one due to its ability to kind of detect more amounts of adenomas. However, this particular test is the most expensive. In addition, it's a pretty invasive procedure. Now, the fecal occult blood testing, it has its advantages in that there are multiple screenings that have to take place, which kind of gives the health specialist the ability to detect more advanced adenomas over time and allow for patients to receive early treatment. While sigmoidoscopy is the cheaper and relatively quicker procedure, it has several significant disadvantages. One, it does not use sedation, and it can be uncomfortable for the examination. Also, it examines only the bottom third of the colon, so it misses about half of the significant cancerous polyps in there. Another kind of solution to colorectal cancer would be dietary regulation. There's pretty sufficient evidence that shows that colorectal cancer is an association with several supplements such as calcium, fiber, sugar, fat, and even meat. For example, fiber, it's known that it speeds up the passage of matter through the gut and kind of helps to reduce the time that for carcinogenic substances to act on the gastrointestinal system. So that may be something to suggest to clients as a means to kind of reduce the risk for colorectal cancer. The consumption of red meat, excessive consumption of red meat has been identified as a causative factor for colorectal cancer. In one study by Bingham and his colleagues, they reported that individuals consuming large amounts of red meat appeared to have a greater incidence of DNA damage within their gut compared to vegetarians. Sugar has also been shown to be an association with increased risk for colorectal cancer. An increase from about 27% to 37% was observed in the risk of colorectal cancer, with increase in the carbohydrates and other types of sugars in the male participants of this study. And then also increased ingestion of calcium has also been shown to be a factor looked at that can reduce the risk for colorectal cancer. So where exactly do we go from here? Well, with Pignone and his colleagues, they conducted a systematic review for like the U.S. Preventive Service Task Force, and they found that compared with those for no colorectal cancer screening, the costs per life year gain with several colorectal cancer screening strategies that they were doing, they were all less than $50,000 per life year's gain. Also, we know that the federal government has already taken initiative to kind of promote the increase of fruit and vegetable consumption. They're doing this as a means to reduce colorectal cancer and other types of cancers. The evidence has been gaining support that a healthier diet does lead to healthier outcomes. In fact, about 1.2% of federal funding goes towards nutrition education. So with this intel, it's important that we enact protocols to kind of develop campaigns and materials as a means to promote, colorectal cancer screening and provide dietary guidelines. With the health care reform now taking place in the U.S., and which I'm referring to the Affordable Care Act, because now with the Affordable Care Act, the United States is now starting to focus more on prevention as a means to kind of decrease morbidity. And individuals are now having more access to colorectal cancer screening, information about how to reduce the risk for colorectal cancer, and they're not having to worry so much about the financial burdens that come along with this. So this is my portion. Thank you so much for listening.
Cancer continues to be a problem in the world today, especially in America. However, it's a preventable problem. As discussed earlier in this paper, regular screenings after the age of 40 can severely reduce the risk of mortality by keeping medical professionals up to date on your colon health and finding cancerous polyps before they have a chance to threaten your livelihood. While some health and lifestyle changes, like eating healthier and exercising regularly, may lead to reduced chance of developing colorectal cancer, the best way to fight against this disease is to encourage regular screenings and test people who are part of the at-risk age. Screenings have proven results, but legislators do not seem to support the idea that everyone should have access to them. Interest groups can help with this process. They can use their considerable clout to help make sure legislative action takes place so that more people can afford to be screened if they want to. Screening beginning at 40 can reduce the mortality of colorectal cancer by 16%, and yet we see less than 50% of people who are covered for screens take part in them. The most important action our program can take is to make sure that people who are covered for screening actually get screens. These screenings can be increased by making sure at-risk populations have all information they need to know the health risks of not getting screened for colorectal cancer. All the information present here tells us one thing: colorectal cancer is preventable. By encouraging legislators to cover more screening options for more people, we can make sure those who want to get screened can afford it. Having the strong backing of coalitions and interest groups means that we can stand together and keep people informed of the risks and make sure that Congress and regulating agencies and government take all the necessary steps to safeguard public health. Finally, by keeping every person at risk informed of where, how, and why to get screened, we can make sure that everyone who worries about colorectal cancer need worry no more. Thank you.
The campaign created by Group 3 for colorectal cancer awareness is Show You Care, Be Aware. The overall message we are trying to send in the medias we created is that we want people to be aware of the screening process for colorectal cancer and that it is important for people to do it not only for themselves but for the people who love them. Each piece of media includes silhouettes of people. By using silhouettes of people, it shows that colorectal cancer does not discriminate against race, sex, or age. You cannot put a face to this cancer. We have also included facts about colorectal cancer in each piece. These facts are the most important things to remember. The poster talks about how getting regular screenings is something that everyone can do for themselves and for their families. Ask your doctor about when to begin testing and how often you should be tested. The fact we included is that colon cancer is the third most common diagnosed cancer. The flyer talks about how you can set a good example for your family by getting screened starting at age 50. It is important for the next generation to know how important screening is. The facts we included here are that 28 million Americans are not up to date on their screenings. 1 in 20 people will be diagnosed with colon cancer in their lifetime, and that if found early, most polyps can be removed before they have a chance to turn into cancer. The question card gives information about questions you can ask your doctor. The fact included here is that the screening test can find this cancer early, and that's when treatment works the best. The insert explains that if our present generation is screened, it will prepare our future generations. If you have loved ones who are 50 or older, ask them to talk to their doctor about screening options. The facts included here are that when being screened for colon cancer, you have more than one choice, and that people with a family history of colon cancer are at a higher risk. The postcard is just a quick reminder that it is time for your colon cancer screening.